Welcome everyone, this is Viking, and today we're going to take a quick look at the basics of the AJS-37 Viggen. It's a daunting aircraft because it's so different from all of the NATO or Warsaw Pact aircraft that you might be used to. Um, but in my opinion, that's part of the fun, and it's part of what makes it such a unique ride. So really, before we even arm the jet, much less turn it on, we're going to create a dynamic flight plan for the Viggen for one of its data cartridges. Um, you can, of course, just like with any other jet, accept the flight plan that the mission editor gives you, and just like any other jet, you can manually punch in a bunch of lat-long coordinates. That's an option as well. And we are going to demonstrate that for one waypoint just to show you how it's done. But much easier if it's much easier if we use the mark labels on the F10 map. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out these four Strellas with four Mavericks. Now, basically, I want to sort of come at them in a line, right? So I want to set an ingress point somewhere over here. So we'll do that first. Going to set my ingress point roughly here. And because it's my first waypoint, and because it's a navigation waypoint, not an attack waypoint, I'm going to call it B1. B for navigation, I know it's not an N, I'm sure it makes sense in Swedish, and 1 because it's the first one. Now you don't actually have to create these in order. This is going to be attack waypoint, and it's going to be the third one. So the attack waypoints are M for Mike, and that's going to be waypoint 3. And then this one is going to be waypoint 2, also an attack waypoint, so M2. That's what I mean by you don't have to create them in sequence, you just have to make sure that the numbers make sense. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do waypoint 4. And then waypoint 5, we're going to enter in manually, just to demonstrate that so you know how to do it. So we've created 4 mark points. We're going to do the landing airfield later. We're going to show you how to do that as well. And so now that we've done that, let's arm the jet, because right now it's not carrying anything. The Viggen has no countermeasures that it carries internally. It can mount a countermeasures pod, but we're not going to. Also, it has no internal gun. You can mount a set of kick-ass 30mm gun pods, but we're not going to. On these outboard pylons, you can only have sidewinders. This is an AIM-9P, which sucks. This is an AIM-9L, which is not fantastic, but if you find yourself in a self-defense situation, it's literally that or nothing, because you don't have a gun. So it's run away or use these or some combination thereof. So I usually end up putting those crappy sidewinders out on the edge there, because that's all those hard points are good for. In the middle, fuel tank is all you're allowed to pick, and so after that, you got 4 hard points to work from. Now today we're going to be carrying 4 Mavericks, but which Mavericks? There's the on the Viggen, Mavericks are the RB-75. So there's a 75 regular, 75 Bravo, 75 Tango. What's the difference? 75 regular, like all of these have an infrared camera, so none of them are the daylight ones, like the A-10 can carry, or used to be able to carry. I can't remember. In any event, in most aircraft, when you're carrying Mavericks, you can choose between a wide field of view and a narrow field of view, and there's a button you can push to make that, to toggle between. On the Viggen, there's no button for that. So the RB-75 regulars are the anti-tank Mavericks, the one with the smaller warhead, the lighter weight ones. And this one has a wide field of view, and the Bravo has a narrow field of view, meaning it's zoomed in more. The Tangos are wide field of view heavy hitters. I can't remember the exact weight of the warhead, but it's the one that's not for tanks. It's the one that's for buildings and ships. So since we're going after a set of Strellas, which don't need much explosive to kill them, we're going to use the 75 Bravos. So we get maximum zoom available and an itty-bitty little warhead. Well, not itty-bitty little warhead. It's a pretty substantial warhead. It's just not as large as the Tangos. So missiles, RB-75 Bravo. Okay, load it up.
Request rearming. Copy.
Okay, I'm just going to reset a couple of switches here. I'm going to open the cover for the external tank jettison, because we're going to have to jettison it at some point, and I might be busy when I'm doing it. I don't want to fiddle with the cover.
Rearming complete.
So I like to open that ahead of time. And because we're going to be using RB-75s exclusively, I'm going to select the RB-75 on the selector there. Having done some of the basic stuff there, I think I'm actually going to start up the jet now. I'm going to close the canopy. Whoops. And I'm going to turn on the oxygen. Then in this area, turn on the battery, reset the master caution. Then I think this is a fuel valve or something. Generator. Click here to advance the throttle to ground idle, and here to actually start the engine. While we're waiting for that to start, we're going to click back here to put the flight data cartridge in. Then we're going to hit right shift K to call up the NEEP. Now, what you're seeing here is the flight plan that we programmed into the mission editor, not the one that we just did in the F10 map. So we got to hit the right page a bunch of times until we get to, alright, sorry about that, until we get to ground crew settings. Then you need to do a keybind for this. It's select data cartridge down and up. I use insert and delete because I wasn't using those for anything else. And we go down one to number 18, which is cartridge from marks on the F10 map. And that's how we load that data cartridge. So now that we have selected that, we can... Oh, and you got to wait for this red tag to go away. Okay, there we go. And the compass kind of jitters a little bit and then stops jittering, and that means that we're ready to load our data cartridge. Now, we load the data cartridge. I'm just going to lock my head tracker for this one so that it's easier to, or less disorienting to watch. Act pos is your current actual position. It tells you where you are right now. Ref Lola is reference points. Actually, you know what, I'm going to change my angle on the camera a little bit so we can see everything we need to see. Alright, so Ref Lola is reference for longitude and latitude. Most jets, it's latitude first, longitude second. In the Viggen, it's longitude first, latitude second. It's a little bit backwards, but it doesn't take that much getting used to. Alright, now we're going to load the data cartridge, so we're going to switch this from output to input, so we get all zeros. And then no matter what, no matter where you are, Persian Gulf, Caucasus, NTTR, Normandy for all I care, it doesn't matter. You always, the code you always enter in is 9099. It's always this. That just means load the data cartridge. Doesn't matter what's on it, doesn't matter what you plan to do. It's always 9099, and then this button here is basically your enter button. When you hit it, the 9 starts blinking, and everything goes all zeros when it's done loading your data cartridge. Okay, so now we're going to go to output and back to act pos, and in act pos output we're allowed to select the different waypoints we got. Waypoint 1, waypoint 2, 3, 4, and you see it says M4 up there. If I hit waypoint 5, we don't have a waypoint 5, so it won't do that. But we want a waypoint 5. There's a fourth target that we're going to have to put at waypoint 5. And the way we enter that is with Ref Lola input. Now, waypoint 5 is going to be this happy little fella. So his coordinates are 272241 and 545607. We put the longitude in first, and we do not have to specify easting. It knows, what hemisphere of the world we're in. So it knows north, it knows east. Unlike most jets, you don't have to specify north or east. So we're just going to put in 545607. 5456, and when I hit 7, it's going to go all zeros. That means it's ready to take the northing. Northing is 272241, 272241, and when we enter the last one, it cycles between the two coordinates, so you know what you've just entered. So 545607, 545607, yep, and then 272241, 272241, cool. Now, where are we going to put that coordinate? We're going to put it in waypoint 5. Now, I'm going to go to ActPos to confirm this. So we've got waypoint 4 selected right now, and it's M for an attack waypoint, and we got waypoint 5 selected, but that's an attack waypoint, and it's B for a navigation waypoint. That's no good. So to fix that, we're going to go to tact. Input, then we say 9, waypoint 5, and now it's an M. And then if we hit 0, waypoint 5, it's back to a B. So it's 9 for attack, 0 for navigation, when tact is in input. When you're using some of the Viggen's more sophisticated weapons, tact has some complicated codes to punch in, but that's a topic for another video. We're just going to do Mavericks today. I guess QFE is also worth mentioning. You have two altimeters. This is your backup altimeter, and you never fucking touch it. There's a knob here that you can turn. Don't turn it, ever. This is calibrated for sea level, and this is something that we kind of spontaneously calibrate for ground level. It's still a barometric altimeter, so we have to change a dial. We have a radar altimeter here, but it's not reflected on this instrument. And although Mavericks don't care about QFE, weapons like the rocket pods and bombs, which I'll cover in a later video, they do care about QFE, so we need to know about this. Right now, these two instruments basically agree. You can't tell because there's a wide needle in front of it, but it says 1012. This one is 1013, pretty close to the same. Now, we've loaded a different data cartridge, so if we pull up the kneeboard, and we bounce back over to the waypoints, we see that waypoint 2 has a QFE of 990.4. So for that, we put in 990, and then this, like if we're 990.0, then you get the 0 like right in the center of it, but it's 990.4, so get it part way to 1. That's basically as close to 990.4 as you can get. You don't have to be dead on accurate, but you got to be pretty close if you want your bombs and rockets to hit the right spot. Did I forget to arm my ejection seat? I did. Okay, so I was checking the instrument panel, or the caution light panel down here, and this light means you have not armed your ejection seat, stupid. Alright, we've gotten rid of that. We're on ActPos. We're going to hit this. Oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot to put in the landing airfield, because we generated our flight plan from the F-10 map. So what we have to do for the landing airfield is get a list of airfields. We're going to be landing at LAR Air Base. LAR Air Base is number 11, so its code is 9011. And it's, and we'll come to the runway in a second. So, Reflola, input, 9011, but we don't hit enter. We hit this button, which refers to our landing airfield. So that's been punched in. Output, ActPos. And if I actually go to Reflola and I hit the landing airfield, ActPos, landing airfield, then Reflola, so that we're at L1, our primary landing airfield, It says 9011, but then it cycles to 9015. That's the airfield we would divert to. So you can put in 2 landing airfields, a primary one and a diversion airfield. As it happens, 9015 is the airfield we're currently at. It's not a great alternative, because it would mean flying like 150 nautical miles, and we might not have the gas for that if it comes to that. So if I were a more careful planner, I might put in a different airfield for the diversion one, but it's fine. We'll be able to land at LAR. It'll be fine. Okay, so we got our flight plan all set up. We got our jet armed. We got the QFE for at least our first target programmed in, even though the Mavericks don't need it. We're gonna, to take off, we need to, oh, that's what I forgot. Okay, when we come in to land at LAR Airfield, I'm going to go back to this one now, L1, landing airfield. When we come into LAR Airfield, we're going to want to land on runway 27 instead of coming around the other way and landing on 09. So we're going to put this over to Banagras, and actually we see that it thinks we're going to be, our landing airfield, we see that it thinks we're going to be landing at on 090. So we hit, oh god damn it, what's the button? I think you just hit the same button again. Yep, that's it. Okay, so now it's 270 for the landing airfield. Fantastic. And that's still in output mode, not input mode. Counterintuitive. And while we're at it, act pause, current airfield, Banagran. Yes, we are going to be taking off on a heading of 307. So that one it guessed correctly, but if it hadn't, 127 is the reciprocal heading that we could also use if we were at the other end of the runway, which we're not. Okay. That was an awful lot of shit before we even got off the ground. That was 17 minutes worth of shit. Okay. This is the parking brake. If you just tap the toe brakes, it gets rid of it. Over here we got the throttle. If I push it forward, it does no movement at all, and then it will click. There's the click. That's the first click, and that is your taxiing one. If I move it a little bit forward, tiny little bit, it'll click again, and that's too fast for, that's too much gas for ground taxiing. But it's not enough to overcome resting inertia. So you gotta kick the throttle up a bit, and then once you get going, all the way back to nothing, and then forward to the first click. There we go. Now the nose wheel steering on the Viggen.
Airfield 1-1. Clear to taxi to runway 30.
Yeah, this is not fucking crimps, dude. But the nose wheel steering on the Viggen is very, very touchy. I had a lot of trouble controlling this until I set the curves up to something like 20. So you may want to set a lot of curve for this, because you don't use the rudder much in high-speed flight. In this, the rudder is primarily used to do nose wheel steering. Okay, we're pretty well lined up, and we're about to take off. So we're going to hit the brakes. And only now am I going to turn the HUD from standby into nav mode. And that's because if you don't take off within, I think, like 3 minutes of putting it into nav mode, it can overheat and damage your INS and cause some pretty serious INS drift. We don't want that. So, and we're also not perfectly lined up, but that's okay because there's something else I want to show you. I'm going to activate the thrust reverser, give it a bunch of gas. Away we go, backwards. Yay, Viggen. Alright, throttle to nothing, thrust reverser disabled. You cannot hit the brakes when this thing is going backwards. The brakes are forward thrust. And the reason for that, and I'm just going to pause this while I go look at the exterior, because it's noisy as all get out. But if you look at the way the weight is distributed on the landing gear, if you were heading backwards and you hit the brakes, it would be a tail strike, for sure. So you have to stop your backwards momentum by making the engine put out some forward thrust. And actually, while I'm out here, I'm going to activate the thrust reverser and then deactivate it again so you can see it work. See, basically it closes off the tailpipe and forces the exhaust out through that angled slat in the back. Simple but ingenious. Alright, now I'm pretty well lined up, but I'm not perfectly lined up. So I'm going to taxi forward a little bit. Just come left a tiny little bit. And then hit the brakes. The brakes on this are very powerful, as you can see, and I've got it bound to a button, not an axis, so it's all or nothing. Once you've done that, you should hit the reference button. That one, the reference button. And you'll watch your compass jump just a teeny tiny little bit. There we go. That is heading 307. And that helps you get an absolutely perfect, or close enough to it, close enough to perfect alignment when you're doing your takeoff. We're on an island here. We're going to be heading over a bunch of ocean, and that means we won't have any ground to look at to tell us where we are. So we're going to be working purely on the inertial navigation system. In Act POS, the last 2 digits are key. 0 tells you what mode the TerraNav system is in, and the second last digit tells you TerraNav status, and the actual last digit is the estimated drift in kilometers. So if it says 50, that means it knows where it is. It's looking at the ground with the radar. It's comparing it to its internal map, and it's able to adjust and basically correct for the drift in the navigation system by doing terrain mapping. If the second last digit is not 5, if it's something like 2 or 3, that means it's trying to get a handle on where it is, but it's not completely sure. And so sometimes you'll see this thing read 2-1, which means that the INS drift is estimated to be about 1 kilometer. You're probably about 1 kilometer away from where the plane thinks you are. And basically, higher numbers are better. 5 is the best number, and you always want a 0 in here if you can. But as we go across the ocean, you'll see this second last digit being like 2 or 3 because it's trying to look at the water and compare it to a ground map, and obviously that's not going to work. Alright. This thing has 3 stages of afterburner. We're going to use the second stage only, because the third stage can actually damage the finish on the runway, because it is so damn powerful. And 300 kilometers per hour is our takeoff speed. See this bar getting gradually wider. When it touches the poles on either side of it, we'll be doing 300 kilometers per hour. We've also got a speedometer there, 300, and takeoff. We want to put the velocity vector up to the top of the tall poles and hold it, so we get a nice gradual rate of climb. I am keeping the gear down because when the gear comes up, flaps automatically come up. Alright, so we're going to put gear up at 350. We're going to put the... shit, did that work? It did not. One of my protest switches was in a bad way, and okay. Alright, good. And now we're doing 500 kilometers per hour, so there's no danger of falling out of the sky. I'll just go from afterburner down to full mill. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to estimate QFE and what the HUD symbology is. So I'm going to hit the altitude hold autopilot when we hit 100 meters, sinking very gradually, and 100 meters. Okay. Now, basically, from here to here is 3 degrees, from here to here, 2 degrees, from here to here, 1 degree. And the outermost bars are 100 meters tall. Now it says 100 meters, but it's rounding. We're probably at like 108 meters at this point. Now, if I were to switch from radar altimeter to barometric, thank you, it actually thinks that we're at 80 meters above sea level. And it's kind of confused. Radar Make sense? Barometric, not so much. So one of the ways that you can perform a QFE fix is to get yourself at 100 meters by radar and then disable autopilot. So we're going to get 100 meters. I'm going to turn autopilot altitude hold on just to sort of stabilize things. I don't think we're really accelerating it. Actually, we are accelerating very slightly. I'm going to adjust the throttle to try and kill the acceleration. Well, we're not accelerating much. So, by radar, we're at 100 meters. And then by barometric, we're at... Okay. I left autopilot on. Okay, that's not good. Alright, so, radar, 100. There we go. Now the barometric agrees that we're at 100. 100 by radar, 100 by barometric. Now we can turn the altitude back on. And that shows that the QFE is approximately equal to sea level. Sea level being 1012, we're reading 1014. It's within a reasonable margin of error. But I think we said that our primary target is B2, which is 990.4. So we're going to adjust that, kill the autopilot, 990.4. That's not a good current QFE, but it is going to be the QFE of the first thing we hit, and that will help us a little bit. I'm also going to turn on the radar. There's not much to see on the ocean today, but it's nice to have it improved operating. This Viggen is currently the only DCS world aircraft that has air-to-ground radar. The Hornet's going to have it someday, but as of the time of the making of this video, it is not available. Alright, now, you might be thinking, I heard the Viggen is very, very fast. How come we're doing Mach 0.64? That's bullshit. I go faster than that in my Harrier. Well, you go faster than that in your Harrier probably at a higher altitude. Right? Down low, fuel consumption is very high compared to when you get up to like 15, 20, 30,000 feet. That said, we do have a lot of gas. This is our fuel gauge. It's in percent. So basically, we've got 111% of our internal fuel capacity. What do you say we kick it up to afterburner stage 2 until the external tank is dry? And that'll help move things along. I'm going to increase the radar range to 120 kilometers so that we can see our first waypoint, our Ingress point. This says mil, that's a Swedish mile. A Swedish mile is 10 kilometers. So it's pointing at 11, so that's basically 110 kilometers. 11 Swedish miles is 110 kilometers. And then when it gets down to under 40, where kilometers will fit on the gauge, then this mil will switch to kilometers and the needle will indicate kilometers. When we do the attack, we will switch our HUD over to attack mode. Now, that tiny little circle right there is the location of our waypoint. We have a very accurate range to our waypoint. We have a very accurate bearing to our waypoint. But the elevation is based entirely on this QFE shift. So if I disable autopilot and play with the page up, page down key, you can actually see the thing moving around there. Now I'm going to try and get it back to 990.4. 990.4. There we go. Autopilot back on. HUD mode back to manual. So when we're trying to use that circle to help us aim our Mavericks, or tell us where to look for the target waypoints we laid out, the elevation is going to be correct for the first target, wrong for the next three. So it's going to be easy to hit the first one. And I'm going to try and talk a little bit as I do it, so that I'm explaining how to do it. But for targets 2, 3, and 4, man, it's going to be happening too fast. I'm just And I see that we're down below 100% fuel capacity. So we're going to cut it back to full mill. Drop the tank. And now is kind of the fun part, because we're still about 70 clicks from the ingress point. And like, because we don't have countermeasures, the ground is our countermeasures. We use terrain masking, we use ground clutter. We try to stay really, really low to the ground as we approach our targets. Currently I'm 30 meters above the deck, going over a slight hill. That was less than 10 meters clearance. And I'm hugging right from the actual waypoint a little bit, because when we hit the waypoint it's going to be a left turn, and I want to be able to pass through the waypoint as I turn. Because right now it says our next waypoint is B1, but when we pass through it, it should automatically cycle to M2. And I want to demonstrate that happening. However, I'm probably not going to directly overfly M2, which means I'm going to manually cycle things to M3, 4, and 5. Now, be careful about nosing down. I mean, I'm doing this at 0.7 Mach, which is like not that fast, I guess, but it's very easy to momentarily red out in the Viggen. The animation for it looks like blacking out, but the problem is the same. You can't control your jet, and you just pointed it at the ground. So be very, very careful about that, and try to roll over if you're going to do a descent. You want to use positive G's all the time, as opposed to negative G's. And like, if you see a little formation where you can maintain some terrain masking, just get in the habit of going for it if it's not too far out of your way. If somebody in the sky is looking down at you, you'll be difficult to distinguish between from the ground clutter. And if someone on the ground is looking for you, they're going to have rocks in their way, and that helps you. I mean, goddamn, everything is a Death Star trench run in this jet. You can declutter the HUD for low-level flight so those reference bars don't get insane, because like I say, the outermost bars are always 100 meters. If you're flying at 20 meters, that means they're going to be 5 times the height of the horizon line, and that's not going to be especially helpful. Something else worth mentioning is that when you go from subsonic to supersonic, the jet will pitch down. So maybe gain a little bit of altitude, go up to like 50 or 100 meters before you go supersonic, just so that you're able to cope with the pitch down. And this terrain up here is just, it's Viggen paradise. It's all these little corridors you can use to do terrain masking and hide in the ground clutter. And you know, if you were doing this in a Hornet, you'd be at 30,000 feet right now, you know, getting your guided munitions ready. Probably with the autopilot on. Down here, Death Star trench run. We are 20 kilometers from the ingress point. So after we go over this hill, I believe there's going to be a plane that we're going to dive down into. I love seeing hilly terrain. Not doing negative G's. Staying on the deck. The closer we get to the target, the more important it is. You do not want them to get a shot off. We're at 10 clicks from the target, and so actually we're going to go around this hill. what's up ahead here. It's gonna... Oh wait, we have no choice. And glancing down, I see we're at 5-0. We were at 2-0 when the bottom of the airplane was pointed away and off to the side, but now we're at 5-0, so we're getting tear nav updates, so we can trust that is accurate. We're gonna come around here, head towards waypoint 1. And it will roll over to waypoint 2 momentarily. Do it. And waypoint 2. Okay, so we're gonna get on target. There we are. We're going to switch to attack mode. And so the Mavericks sight becomes active. T0 fixes the default position. The sight is locked dead ahead and can't be slewed. I'm going to switch it to T1, which allows for slewing. If you need to reset it after you've been slewing because it's at the wrong place, then you just put it back to T0. No problem. There is no indication on the HUD where your Maverick is pointed at. You're just looking down the collimator sight. And I see that we're about 17 clicks from the target. Gonna get it centered. Slow down. I do not see it, so I'm resetting. I'm actually gonna set the damn autopilot at this point just to make sure that I don't crash. Oh, there it is. Okay. TV fix. It's locked onto the contrast. Disable the autopilot. And boom. Reset it to T0 fix. And now I'm going to do something that's actually kind of stupid and dangerous. I'm going to overfly my target more or less. Alright, so I'm also going to manually switch to waypoint M3. The neat thing about the Viggen is that you often beat the missile to the target. Because it's fast. It's a very, very, very fast jet. There's a heat-seeking missile launcher. No more. And we're going to come around this way. The QFE is wrong, so we can't trust the elevation cue. But we can trust the left-right, so we're going to scroll down. There it is. TV fix, scroll into target. Rifle. Reset it to T0. Hit 4 for waypoint 4. Come this way. Watch for the explosion. Yep, he did not have a chance to launch on us. That's fantastic. Actually, we're not really lined up properly. Oh shit. I may have screwed up a little bit here. T0. Oh man. Yes I did. I screwed up. I got too close while there was a hill in the way. Okay, it says we're 5 clicks. That's roughly the range of his missile. So I'm going to maintain cover, head up into the hills, and come around. I lost too much speed in that last turn, so I'm going to regain it. And going high is not usually what Viggens do, but... Okay. Kill the burner. And look for the target. Seriously, dude. What the fuck? Okay, well now we're within range of his missiles, so we're gonna get out of range. I would like to light the burner again, but that's only gonna make it easier for his missile to lock on. So, where the hell is that guy? Ah, I see him now. Okay, well now that I know where he is, this is gonna be easy. It's beeping because my angle of attack is too high because I'm turning too hard. It's fun. It's fun. Gonna do the TV fix right away because I know exactly where the spool is. And right. And reset to T0. And 5. And cool my jets a little bit. Literally. Boom. One down. And then this dude is going to be this way. And I think he might be over a hill. Nope. He is right there. So hit it. And back to T0. And back to nav mode. And you know what? Let's just do this. Let's just head right towards this guy as our missile does. We're blazing hot. It's a heat-seeking missile launcher. You should be able to hit us. You should be able to hit us, but there's a minimum range on your missile, isn't there, my son? Yes, there is. All right, that's kind of what's fun. All right. We're currently doing Mach 1.1 here, so we're going to turn very gently. We do not want to rip off the wings or anything like that, but we do feel the need for speed. That's the thing that we feel. Whoa, okay, you see how I just went a little bit nose down and started redding out there? That's because I didn't trim to adjust to the fact that at supersonic speeds you pitched it. That was me being a dumbass. A little too addicted to the speed. We are currently about 40 kilometers from the airfield and doing Mach 1.34, 1.35. It's really fun. We're getting a little close. So we're going to go full mil, and you can see the speed dropping away like crazy as we go down to full mil, and watch the nose pitch up as we go down into the full mil range. I'm actually trimming hard nose down right now. That was probably a little too much. In the transonic range, things get a little bit unreliable. We're down to Mach 0.95, so no longer transonic, so we can, for example, use the autopilot to sort of auto-trim the jet. We're currently at 300 meters, but our turn, pardon me, is at 2-0. That means it doesn't really know where we are, but it doesn't think we've drifted much. When you get lower down, it has an easier time reading the terrain, and when the terrain has more features, it has an easier time reading. So we're at 2-0, now we're at 5-0, because we went over a couple of bumps in the ground, and that helps it figure shit out. Alright, so it's going to help us line up here. I'm just going to put this thing over into visual landing mode. The instrument-assisted landing is beyond the scope of this first video. Now, I've put us all the way back to 0 throttle, and I'm also going to drop the speed brakes. Speed brakes are goddamn pathetic. Look at that. Look at that. That's nothing. How is that supposed to slow down a jet this size? The speed brakes do nothing. Almost nothing. But it's all right. I can see that we're plenty far out from the runway, and we can drop our gear at 550 kilometers per hour, and we're almost down to that now. So I'm going to retract the speed brakes, and then, strangely, I'm going to go to full mil, and then I'm immediately going to press a button that drops this lever. I'll explain why. Full mil, button. Alright, we're at 550, we're dropping the gear, and we're dropping the HUD reflector glass. Now, the HUD is in nav mode, in landing nav mode. And so basically that means that the depressed line here should be placed over the runway threshold, while the velocity vector is a little on the high side. Also, you see how the top line has some distance from the velocity vector? That's a speed indicator. It means we're going too fast, and that is correct. We are going too fast, but we've engaged our auto throttle. That's what that lever did. So we're going to bring the 3-degree glide slope line up to the runway threshold. We're going to land on the right-hand side of the runway. Our traffic, Thunder 1, short final for runway 27 right. Alright, now as that 3-degree glide slope line crosses the threshold, we're going to put our velocity vector down on the threshold. After a certain point, once we get low enough to the ground, now we're basically on glide slope here. Now, once we, oh shit, thrust reverser. I got the thrust reverser turned on now. Okay. Now we're going to put weight on the front wheel because that it has to have weight on the front wheel in order to enable the thrust reverser. And that's why I put it at full mill. It's because that's maximum thrust reverse. Okay, I'm killing the reverser. Now I accidentally overdid it. We backed up a little bit, but seriously. Look how short that landing is. That's nice. You probably killed the radar. That's not doing us any good right now. I mean, it is really nice to be able to land so short. It means that you can use roadways and stuff like that. Oh, and because we're on the ground, there's no air cooling. So we're going to put the HUD into standby to make sure that no damage occurs to the INS. And like pretty much every Viggen driver, I am going to do a cocky parking job. And there we go. Viggens can back into their parking spaces, and to set the parking brake, you pull this out and, pardon me, you hold the wheel brake, you hold the toe brakes, then you pull this out, you release this, you release the wheel brake, and that is what sets the parking brake. It's basically like the P-51 Mustang if you have any experience with that. And that's basically going to do it for this first lesson. I'll cover the Viggen's more interesting weapon systems and capabilities another time, but basically that's that's a quick first look at it, and I hope you found it interesting. Happy flying. See you next time.